Like issue 2 before it, issue number 3 of Skybound's G.I. Joe series picks up right where the action left off last time, so it appears that this title, or at least this arc, is going for a seamless, continuous story with little in the way of time jumps between each issue. We'll see if that holds for the rest of the story arc, but with the way this issue ends, I wouldn't be surprised if that continues. And in this particular case, that approach is a welcome one, as we don't have to wait long at all to find out what happens to Clutch, who managed to infiltrate the Cobra headquarters in Springfield after disguising himself as a Viper. There are several little touches in this sequence that add to the tension of Clutch being discovered, like Mercer bossing him around, which threatens to expose Clutch's lack of knowledge regarding the location as well as Viper protocol. There's also the classic fake-out formula used here where Cobra Commander emerges from the shadows in this sick panel, by the way, proclaiming that there's a spy in their midst. You can just imagine the beads of sweat rolling down Clutch's forehead behind that Viper mask. But while there does end up being another infiltrator, it's not Clutch like you initially expect. It turns out to be an assassin from Cobra Law. This whole bit early on is the highlight of the book for me because we get some great Cobra Commander stuff. While the Commander has been present in the previous 2 issues, he really gets a chance to shine here, and the badass side of him that we saw from his miniseries really comes through nicely in this segment. This is the calculating and brutal Cobra Commander who is able to seize control of any situation. He dispenses with his would-be assassin by grabbing hold of his jaw and, well, we don't see it happen explicitly, but whatever it is, it messes the dude's face up completely. And this is one of those pop art moments that I loved so much from the Duke miniseries, where this sparse panel with a crunch, with a K no less, and a blood splatter does more heavy lifting than actually showing the act itself would. I don't know about you, but that sound is just not what I would want to hear a face and or jaw make, ever. So it's a moment that I found to be really brutal, despite the specifics of the violence mostly being left to the reader's imagination, and this blood spray kind of looking more like somebody spilled a cup of coffee. But what seals the moment is how the Commander is able to keep the rest of those present from learning about Cobra Law. First by cutting short the Cobra Law battle cry by grabbing hold of that guy by the mouth, and then silencing him with that sickening crunch. Then by not allowing the onlookers to see the assassin's true face beneath the human disguise, something we know Cobra Law is capable of as they disguised Nemesis Enforcer as a human in the Cobra Commander miniseries. To keep this assassin's visage and nature a secret, Cobra Commander drops him into a conveniently placed pit of robotic snakes. That really grabbed my attention. I wouldn't have batted an eye if it was a pit of actual snakes, as that feels like a very Cobra thing to have on hand, but the fact that they're mechanical, there's some off-the-wall, kind of zany and ridiculous stuff in this book that feels plucked straight from the cocaine-addled entertainment of the 1980s, and the pit of robo-snakes is definitely one of those things. I also loved the Commander's dialogue in this bit, where before tossing the assassin into the pit, he whispers to him about destiny and Globulus sending him to die. Then he turns the whole thing into a lesson in obedience and fear by warning all the onlookers, the people actively on his payroll, to let this be a lesson to anybody in the room who might underestimate him. Moments like these are why I love Williamson's Cobra Commander so much. He's just such a cool bad guy who always feels in control, no matter the circumstance or what unpredictable thing might happen. This section stood out to me in terms of color work as well. Something I'm learning about myself as I attempt to articulate why I like these books is that I'm partial to cool tones, and apparently I'm a massive sucker for pairings of blues and pinks, as well as blues and purples, which makes sense, I feel like. As a kid, I always gravitated towards the blue bubblegum or the cotton candy flavored ice cream or the blue slushies, purely based on the color, because usually I didn't end up liking the flavors all that much. Anyway, the point is, Jordie Bellaire's colors in this section really appeal to me. This sequence is absolutely drenched in blue, with the occasional breakup provided by the red of the Cobra uniforms or wild splashes of color here or there, suggesting light and reflections, with the use of pink in this particular panel being a standout, which I expect is from the glow of Energon, and the whole thing appears a bit more reflective thanks to the use of screen tones. Very nice. After this sequence with the Commander, the book cuts to the Joes, and the ubiquitous blue gives way to greens so faded they're almost gray at times, as well as a pale yellow and this orangey red that is used frequently throughout this sequence. I love that the sequences for each faction is differentiated by the dominant colors used, and they're clearly distinct. Though we do get some nice blues and purples in one section with the Joes here, with these sweet motion lines, both with the knife flying through the air and as Risk prepares to attack Duke with his electrified brass knuckles, because that's his thing, I guess. I think this section highlights how versatile Tom Reilly is. There's no doubt that he can handle moments that have more gravitas and emotional weight, and he does it really well, but he also balances those moments with more lighthearted and amusing touches. One of the bigger examples is towards the end of the book, where we see Risk and Baroness atop Rams, the sort of signature motorcycle of G.I. Joe, as they parachute into the mission zone, and Risk basically exclaiming how much he loves this sort of thing, maybe like he's a bit of an action junkie or something, and the Baroness just sighs and rolls her eyes. It's just an amusing panel showcasing the character dynamics in an atypical moment. I don't know, there's just something about Baroness looking so annoyed and sighing, with her hair whipping up as she drops out of the sky. It's just a pretty good comedic moment. It's kind of the same thing with the fight between Duke and Risk earlier on, where we have this series of panels as the two characters move in and out of view like a pair of cartoon characters, kicking up this whirl of medical equipment and paperwork in their wake. It's just good stuff. But what's even better is how this sequence is resolved. The fight is broken up by Stalker, who hauled himself out of surgery, hurls a knife between the combatants, and gives them a stern dressing down. This is a nice character moment for Stalker, as shutting down this immature behavior in the way that he does helps define him as the older and more experienced member of the team, one who should be making use of his experience and maturity in helping to shape and guide the younger members of the team, rather than trading barbs with the Baroness like we saw in issue 1. And damn dude, look at those veins in his arms. Those things are fit to burst. I guess they match the ones we saw in Mercer earlier in the issue. Bulging veins aside, Stalker's words hit their mark. It feels, at least for the moment, that the G.I. Joe team has rounded a corner after Stalker's little wake-up call, and they begin to take their shared goals more seriously. Though part of that is probably due to necessity. Clutch establishes contact with the Joes and warns them that Cobra is going after Dr. Monav and the brainwave scanner, giving the team a bit of an edge over Cobra. I have to say, I wasn't expecting Clutch to be this useful undercover this quickly, but it's a satisfying turn of events, even though I wouldn't be surprised if Mercer is onto him, given that panel where we see the leader of the Vipers notice Clutch has disappeared. In any case, we get another nice moment of things being left to our imaginations, where the motorcade transporting Dr. Monav is attacked, and something just rips the door of the vehicle off before one of the guards is yanked out, followed by sustained gunfire. We never really find out what it was that ripped the door off the car. I'm sure there's some kind of device, probably even a real-world equivalent. I don't know what it is. But from the context, it's clear that Duke pulled the guard out and dealt with him as well as the other agent, and both of these agents ended up being part of the Crimson Guard, which is a nice callback to the original toy line and comic, where despite having, in my opinion, one of the coolest outfits, aside from the Vipers, of course, members of the Crimson Guard often fulfilled a deep cover role, often posing as normal, everyday people. Here, obviously, it's a little different. They've infiltrated the government, but you get the idea. But where there are Crimson Guards, the Crimson Twins are never far behind. Xamot and Tomax make a last-page entrance in issue number 3, sporting their new duds and driving this sick-looking variation on the Cobra Stinger. Someone will have to correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think this is the first time we've seen this Cobra-shaped grill guard, which I think is genius. I love it. I got such a huge kick out of seeing this. Not much else to say about it other than it's awesome and I love it. So ridiculous, so on brand, so perfect. But that's it for issue number 3. I keep forgetting to mention this, but longtime viewers who have followed me since the days of the Duke miniseries might remember in that first video I talked about how I did not really care for the use of a Grolix, the thing that censors the swear words. It just kind of takes me out of the moment when I'm reading it. I always feel like the writers should just write around swearing if they're not allowed to. Anyway, I never brought it up again because it just was something that they were going to do, and that's fine. It's not that big of a deal. But something that they started doing in this title that I actually am getting a kick out of is using these Cobra-shaped Grolixes. Would they still be called Grolixes at that point? I don't know. In any case, they're using Cobra symbols to censor the profanity, which I think is a nice touch. So congratulations, G.I. Joe. You got me on board with Grolixes. Well done, I guess. Anyway, I can't wait to see what happens next in this series, as I am having an absolute blast with this title. It's just a really fun comic so far. And while there are outrageous and action-packed moments, it's everything with the characters that's really holding my attention the most. But you'll have to let me know what it is that you like most or don't like about this series in the comments. Thank you, as always, for watching. It's very much appreciated. I hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.